Happy birthday, John Pawson. So I don't know. I should know what age he is. He's alive, and I think he was born around 1950. So he's around 70 now. And here is the man. I would say a very kind and sensitive man, and introverted. And he has nothing of the arrogance that many architects have. He is not an arrogant man, and I like this very much about him. Even the way he is dressed, and he is a very rich man. He came from an affluent family, and he is very, very successful as an architect and as a designer. But you can see he's modest, and I think architects can learn from modesty a little bit. Even here, you can tell he is an inquisitive man, an introverted man, and his architecture in a way shows this. And his architecture is actually very has a spirituality. There is a quest for an ineffable absolute that is present, which is present in almost everything he does. Maybe a little bit less in a work which I'm going to show, where he collaborated with Rem Koolhaas. But Rem Koolhaas, he is a very different architect, so that work is only in part Pawson's, and I would say not in a very significant part. This is a drawing of him. He didn't do it. He does look like a nice man. I mean, a human, not a totalitarian figure, not an autocrat, someone you can talk with, play chess with, and name him on his first name. And it might be that he is Sir, that he has the nobility title offered to him. I forgot to double check, but I think he is. Anyway, I like him. Some drawings by John Pawson. Uh, they are just like the man, very modest. They are just suggestions of what he wanted to do, and they have a level of purity that I think is to be appreciated. I could have shown more works by him. I only show, I think, five projects by him, built works, but he built more. And you can see actually all his work on his website. Just type in John Pawson and you'll discover his works if you don't know it already. Arch Daily and other important sites publish often his works. Now, this is a sketch for the interior of a building he built together with Rem Koolhaas, as I told you. Now I show an interior remodeling of St. Moritz Church, but there is a constant quest in his work for, even if not for explicitly, sacred buildings. I think this man here, if I'm not mistaken, is Toyo Ito. My eyeglasses are not very good, but now I think I'm wrong. It's a lady. Anyway, I saw at first Toyo Ito there. It doesn't really matter. White walls. What can we say? He uses a lot of white, it's true, but he does it convincingly, and he does have distinctive spirituality in his work. And not just in the sacred programs, so to speak. This whiteness is almost intimidating, because I don't know what you think and feel, but I am a little bit uncomfortable when I'm facing such a obvious, although discreet, both obvious and discreet form of, spirituality or purity. Well, he didn't build the building itself, but he did, the interior of this church. You'll see a very, very beautiful chapel. In my opinion, superior to the two chapels that Peter Zumthor built, if I am to be a little bit confrontational, but we'll arrive at it, you'll see it. And then we can talk afterwards about it if you want, if my statement is legitimate or not. I actually, to be honest with you, I envy the multitude of explorations in church architecture in the West. It's something we don't do, and I have a problem with this. I really do. I keep saying if God is creative and if man is made in the image resemblance of God, then man should be creative too. And I don't know why we are not creative, just because the church has its dogma, but I think that dogma should be fought against. Because dogma is the opposite of creativity. I don't think I'm wrong in what I'm saying. You cannot be creative and dogmatic at the same time. Creativity is freedom. It's not dogma. And if God is nature, as Frank Lloyd Wright thought, because he was asked, do you believe in God? And he said, I do, but I spell it nature. Well, what do we learn from nature? Especially now in the spring is the freedom of nature, the freshness of nature. We'll never say nature is dogmatic. It's a good work, a serious work, a sensitive work, and John Pawson is indeed is not a flashy architect, not at all. Light, serenity, space, whiteness, purity, and then the sculptures, which can be read and perceived very, very well against the white background that Pawson provided for them. Silence and light would probably Louis Kahn say. I mean, even the benches, I think they are magnificent in their simplicity, in their austerity, and in the end, in their spirituality. Maybe they are not very comfortable, but then you don't go to the church in order to, lay comfortably on the sofa. That's not why you go to the church. Maybe he designed even the organ. I don't know. But it seems to be integrated into the whole of the building. It's a good work. It is a very good work. Again, I deplore the fact that in my own country, modernity is not accepted into the church architecture. And I don't understand why. It is bizarre when you think about it. You know, the fathers of the church use laptops, they use computers, they use cars, they even provide a large garage underneath the biggest cathedral in the country. So they use the means, the tools, the gadgets even of the present, but they are stuck in an architectural so-called vision, which is not vision at all. I don't understand, you know, no one says anything. I wish I knew some theologians. I would have invited them here to talk. Is this not a church? I think it is. Does it belong to the 21st century? I think it does. So then what's wrong with this kind of architecture? You know, and this is true. It's not a radical, you know, architecture. It's not. But it represents our time. It belongs to the 21st century in a discreet way, in a reticent way, but very spiritual way, I think. Now, a house, text description provided by the architects, meaning John Pawson. From the beginning, the thinking behind the life house was an uncompromisingly modern design where it would be possible to inhabit a different sort of architectural space. Experiments with massing and orientation have produced a composition that is bedded into the fall of the land. The proliferation of blackened gorse, I don't know what gorse is, in the surrounding land is reflected in the dark exterior brickwork, whilst the rough moor grass provides a reference for the lighter bricks used inside. The house program is arranged as a series of self-contained folds opening off two corridors. Meeting at the right angle, these passageways generate extended internal vistas and a plan designed to allow groups living in proximity to spend time together and apart in a spatial arrangement that shares certain characteristics with a monastic cloister. The corridors, one light, one dark, represent more than just the means to get between the different parts of the house. They are key architectural experiences, each charged with its own distinctive character. Now, from the text to this image, maybe there is a certain distance. I would agree, but you'll see some other things. It's the same kind. I mean, it's the same architect like in the previous work. You know, very measured, very subtle. With no need at all to impress. And I like this. And, you know, I like Baroque architecture. I like flamboyance sometimes, but I also like reticence, like in this case. Now, it's true, domesticity by its very nature is not truly, you know, highly charged spiritually, unless you have a large or non-conformist understanding what spirituality means. But you saw he mentioned the cloister. He mentioned, you know, the monastic, and you wonder, you know, this is a house. It's a, you know, house for not for monks, but for regular family. I barely see the pictures. The sunlight is striking me. So you probably know that between the sunlight and our technologies, there is a conflict. When you have too much sunlight, you can't see the screen. And now, and it's not because the light is not actually touching the screen; it's touching me, and then because I have a lighter shirt, is reflected onto the screen, and I didn't think of using a darker shirt. Anyway, some details from the, you know, the reality of fact here. It's hard for me to imagine that I entered this room to wash my hands and not have the feeling that, somehow, that water that comes down on my hands is not very precious. I mean, somehow this room that he made here in this house. Now, of course, if you put the toothbrush and the toothpaste and all the other paraphernalia of hygiene all around, things are changed. But in this picture, as it is now, it's something very close in a way to almost a sacred space. It's because of the light that comes from above, also the shape, the pure cylinder within which the sink finds itself, the austerity, and I mean, there are no accessories. So it's a space of purification. This is Posen. That's how he does everything he does. I don't know how he keeps. I mean, there are no even. Of course, there is a problem with these pictures. They don't totally tell the truth because you know. I mean, look at those pillows. Look at everything is perfect. There are no flowers. There are no books on the shelves. There are no socks on the floor or a pair of shoes. It's just a very fine, pure decor, but life is less pure, fortunately and unfortunately. I mean, look at this. It's intimidating. No, it's. Fortunately, we'll arrive at the second architect, who is very different. I would like to see actually pictures of some architectures by John Pawson after the grand opening, meaning when people begin to live there, and bring in their things, the disorder, and so on. Look at this bathroom. Again, it's a space of it's a room of purification. By the way of purification, I was told that in psychoanalysis, those who clean excessively the sink or things in the bathroom or in the kitchen, actually they are trying to clean something within themselves. And there is a name for this, like excessive, how is it called, man? Excessive. I used to know excessive cleaning disorder or something like this. You are attempting to cleanse yourself by cleaning excessively the poor sink. Now maybe it's just a thought. I mean, look at that lamp, there. Maybe he designed the lamp too, but it's so refined and so. He is truly one of the great masters of minimalism. And I say it with appreciation, although minimalism doesn't seduce me. But I appreciate when I see quality, and here I see quality. But I wanted to say maybe because I read about a British prime minister, I forgot his name, in the 19th century, who was advocating purity and morality and ethics with great passion. He was the priest of cleansing, so to speak, of morals. But I understood he would also go in the middle of the night in the city and try to convince prostitutes to change their way of life. And sometimes I think that those who have so much ardor in this sense must have also within some kind of a psychological shadow or as it is called, the Jungian shadow, maybe. So I wonder what John Pawson has within, if without is what we see. The plan of the house is nice and is, has a certain degree of movement and freedom, even if he uses only rectangular lines, rectangular walls. But it's not a stiff building. It's very well designed. I wonder what is here and here. One inside, one outside. Maybe a small meditation chapel, or I don't know. It's probably this one, with the light coming from above. In my opinion, he is one of the most, I don't like to use the word spiritual too often, because there is a risk of, overusage. But I think he's one of the most spiritual architects today. I can feel it in everything he does. He's not commercial. He doesn't believe in commercial exuberance, if I can call it so. I think he is very interested in essence, and even his drawings, he doesn't show unnecessary details. Everything is reduced to essence. So it is one house, but it is a cluster of several pavilions or little buildings, and together they create one single house. Now this is a work he did in Berlin, in Germany. It's an art gallery, and yesterday we talked about apparent brick, and apparent concrete. You see, he is not afraid to not use finishes. And I like this. Yesterday we talked about sincerity, and it's about not hiding, yes, within his buildings, there is they are very clean, but we don't know how those things would be if people lived in. But he's I mean, look at the walls here. He is not afraid even to leave dirt on the walls, and I think this is a sign of wisdom and a sign of artistic integrity, and also of artistic of poetry. When we try to hide everything, to clean everything, all traces of disorder, or I think is not a very poetical strategy. Look at this. He left it like this in Berlin. Can we do something like this in our country? I wish, and it would be more economical. But this requires a different mentality. That is a mentality which doesn't want to pretend, but it wants to show things as they are. And it's fine. It's okay. If the building is not deteriorated by, who knows, the elements, or it's fine to show this, the imprint of the passage of time. I mean, it would have been very easy for him to make everything white, right? But he didn't, in this case at least. And even this bench, you see, is not smooth, it's not slick. It has a vibration, so to speak. And there are small imperfections. It's fine. Imperfections are part of life. Look at the ceiling here. This is an art gallery. It's not a parking. It's not a garage. It's an art gallery, almost a museum in Berlin. But look at the ceiling. Would we accept this kind of ceiling in our country? I don't think so. You know, because we would feel inferior. We would say, wait a minute, you know, this is a sign of poverty. No, it's not a sign of poverty. It's the sign of the aging of the building, of the passage of time, and it's an artistic decision that the architect made. And I think it's a wise decision. And against this arte povera, you have the sculptures from a different time, and they stand out quite well, I think. So this interior, which appears to be undesigned, is actually, for example, this large surface which reflects is to me a little bit in contradiction with the rest. And anyway, but what I wanted to say is that, what did I want to say? I forgot. No, I didn't actually forget. I think that allowing the building to not assume an excessive, you know, form of narcissism is a good thing. Let the building, you know, recede kind of, you know, and let the art, you know, the art objects, you know, manifest themselves with more strength and obviousness. I guess what I'm trying to say is what I tried to say yesterday too. We spend too much on so-called finishes, you know, and I don't think it's necessary. You can have a good, very fine architecture done with. I'm not saying that his works are inexpensive. No, but this particular gallery maybe you know, was done with you know, with a moderate amount of money. In a way, if I look at this space and I look at how he left, you know, well, there is some work, I guess, on the pavement, but above the ceiling seems to say that life is transitory, is ephemeral. We all one day will all die, and yes, maybe there is a form of pessimism here expressed through architecture, but it's not trying to mislead us. This space is not trying to tell us, you know, everything is beautiful and everything will last forever. No. Now, looking at this interior, you understand, in a way, the realities of life as lived. But in contrast, you have ars longa vita brevis. No, art is long and life is short. In a way, the interior that he made expresses that life is short. And then against this life is short, you have the art which proclaims art is long. To me, it shows the sophistication of the client as well. You know, they didn't want to have, an interior which proclaims more than is actually necessary. No. And the architect delivered exactly in this sense. Some of his sketches, very, again, minimal and reduced to essence in a way. Okay, now we arrive at an interesting work, but this is a collaborative work. And I asked myself, should I include it or not? But since we are dealing here with Oma, with Rem Koolhaas, and I thought, why not show it? Although it's not very clear what John Pawson did. But I found this material, relating to a portrait of John Pawson. So I imagine he had a role here, maybe an important role. But I don't know exactly what he did, because I have a feeling that Rem Koolhaas was really, in a way, the master of the game, so to speak. But we'll see. Plus, here we are dealing with a different kind of work. It's a public building of large dimensions, and it's destined for a function which, in its very essence, is not very reticent. Design. So it's a design museum in London. So inevitably, the work is different from what we saw earlier. But it's an occasion to contemplate the work of a team that is made up of different individuals. In my opinion, Rem Koolhaas and John Pawson don't have a lot in common, but I appreciate the fact that they work together for this project. Now, here there is commerce, it's design, what can we do? But the building has, this is the building, has not austerity, but a certain simplicity that is to be appreciated. And maybe he had a role also in the, in the design of the general scheme. I don't know. I remember that sketch that we saw at the beginning, and I like this view very much, because here the ceiling is dynamic, it is twisted, and I can feel here more Rem Koolhaas than John Pawson. Also, this column reminding me, this sloping column reminds me of that famous cathedral on the highway of the Sun near Florence, where Michelucci built a cathedral, a magnificent cathedral with one column just like this one, in spirit and in form also. Interesting, this accident. Now, the purist, the structuralist, rectangularist would protest, would say, wait a minute, why are you disturbing everything with this annoying accident? Well, I think this so-called annoying accident is a blessing, because life needs surprises, and here we have a surprise, and it's fine. The ceiling also represents a surprise, and it's fine. In a way, this diagonal represents perhaps best what we understand by creativity. The creative activity is like this. It's, in my opinion, almost always oblique, because creators are often rebels in art, in architecture as well, and this part of the building is the rebellious one. So it's a symbol, I think, of creativity, of non-conformism, and should be welcomed like this, I think. We see here the same kind of ceiling like in the art gallery in Berlin. So I guess Pawson had his word here. Here again, we see the rebelliousness of a different kind of column, which in my opinion represents, the non-conformism without which creativity is not really possible. It's a good building. Now these two letters, U and S, could mean, we know what. Now it could mean the country, but it could also mean us, meaning together. Uh, Even bamboo found its place here. Always where we have diagonals, the dynamics of everything we look at increase. That's why I all the time I tell myself and I tell others, use diagonals. The diagonals are those exceptions which make life interesting, more than just bearable. And here is the scheme. This maybe was generated by Oma. The importance of the roof, no? In fact, if something is interesting here, is mainly the roof. So we have diagonals in plan. We also have diagonals in section. I know Rem Koolhaas works often with diagonals. Maybe many people who graduated from Architectural Association use diagonals, because that school in itself is a diagonal in the educational system of the world. If you read what Rem Koolhaas stated about his education, you won't believe it. You know, the way he described his schooling years at the Architectural Association. Now, maybe he exaggerated, it's possible, but it shows that at the time when he was a student, and Zaha Hadid was also a student at that time, you know, there was an almost unbearable degree of freedom in the school. He wrote that if someone wanted to learn about pipes and HVAC systems, structure, and so on, was sent immediately to Switzerland. They were not invited at AA in London. But if you go to the Wikipedia page with Architectural Association and you go at the bottom of the article, and if you look at the list with those people who are alumni, who study there, and I don't think I exaggerate if I say that about 80% of the architects who move the world today studied at Architectural Association. It's just incredible. Of course, the conformist one would say, wait a minute, why didn't you just make a flat roof here? You know, why did you complicate yourself with this roof? But, you know, again, creativity in itself is some kind of a complication. No? It's much easier to sit on the sofa and eat popcorn and look at the TV, no? But then you are creating nothing. So it's your option. You sit on the sofa and create nothing and increase your boredom, or make such roofs. Bravo to them. That's all I can say. So what we see here, we see these prisms, the blocks of flats. And they represent vita brevis, life is short. And then we see here in between these two buildings, a fragment of the building by Rem Koolhaas and the other two, one of them being John Pawson. That seems to say, although design is not always quite what we mean by art, but it's close to art. Ars longa. Life is long. No, life is short and art is long. Now, this chapel, in my opinion, is a masterpiece. So let me read the text. When John Pawson was commissioned by the Siegfried and Elfried Denzel Foundation to design a wayside chapel for a site in southwestern Germany, he became part of a long-standing tradition of erecting chapels as spiritual and architectural features in the landscape. The purpose of this chapel, or 7 chapels project, is to provide cyclists with a series of places in which to take shelter, but also to pause and reflect. A common brief for all the 7 chapels stipulated a timber construction with a cross in the vicinity and provision of seating. And this is the building. I love it. And not just because I like to bike, I just love it. It's the summum of modesty, and yet it is monumental. You'll see inside. It's a splendid construction for meditation and what else can I say? I think it's look at this. Look at the interior. There is just one window there, and then of course, the question might be what happens if several people enter there. Well, they can sit, but mainly one person can see straight through the window. You have the cross, you have the square of the window, you have this narrow space, and it's tall. You'll see it is tall. That's why I said it's monumental. Look how it looks from the outside. You know, it's what can I say? It's a small masterpiece in my opinion. You understand very well how it was built. Look even how that window was carved into the wall, and you realize that it is tall. It's narrow and tall, and it's a fine chapel. There is even a touch of rustic, aesthetics in a way. The way the wood is cut diagonally to accommodate the opening of the window, which I don't know if it has glass. Perhaps not. It doesn't seem to have glass. The the wood is left as you see it with its so-called imperfections. It's fine. It probably doesn't have a door. It's just open continuously, as it should be. In my opinion, all churches and all chapels, well, I know if a church has a lot of interesting things on the walls, if you have no door or if it's continuously open, you risk of losing those things on the walls. But here there is nothing, so there is nothing to steal. It's fine. I recall Milarepa, the great Tibetan mystic, with whom actually Brâncuș identified himself. Brâncuș thought he was some kind of a reincarnation of Milarepa. And Milarepa was living in a cave, and he wrote a poem where he said, people are afraid of thieves. But I'm not afraid of thieves because I have nothing. They can't steal anything from me. I only have a deteriorated, degraded piece of fabric underneath me, like a blanket, and that's it. So what could they steal? It's the same here, it's the world of the spirit, and that's it. And I don't know if you noticed, but the more possessions you have, the more keys you have. In the United States, everybody had 10, 15, 20 keys, It's unbearable, There's so many keys, the paraphernalia of protection, as Rem Koolhaas would have said. It's an interesting chapel. I like it. It's discreet, it's poetical, it's even whimsical a little bit. I only regret that they cut those trees in order to make the chapel. I don't think we should cut the trees any longer. But look at the section. It's beautifully, almost naive, but it's not naive. I mean, John Pawson is not a naive architect at all. It's yeah, look at this section. The elevation. And you can even sit outside, as you can see. And, I found it, I mean, it was, I think even on their website, it's an abstract graphic representation of the absoluteness of the facade in a way. I like the fact that it is not like this in reality. Now, a home farm, this is his own house. He or his own farm, if you want to say. It's a home farm, but it belongs to John Pawson. And again, yesterday we talked about apparent brick, unfinished, here it is. And not just the brick, even the wood, look at it. So I like the fact that John Pawson is not obsessive about, keeping everything you know, protected and so on. It's okay. The inside, though, is different. I agree. Here, you know, what was acceptable outside doesn't seem to be acceptable inside. But many parts of his works resemble, even here, if you didn't see the chimney, you would say, well, this is almost like a chapel itself. It's not. Then look at the bedroom, you know, it's, my God, my God. I mean, you know, you feel like praying everywhere in his farmhouse or house farm. Look at those chairs. He probably designed them. But these chairs on the right, these are by, if I'm not mistaken, by Wim Wenders, the great, not Wim Wenders, sorry, he's a film director, by Hans Wegner. Hans Wegner, the great Dutch, the king of chairs. And I did make a presentation on his birthday on Hans Wegner. Those chairs are by him, and they are, you know, modern classics. But the ones on the left, I think, are by John Pawson, you know, kind of stubborn and morose and black and uncomfortable. They are more like sculptures, but they could function as chairs, I guess. Those three are for the great inquisitors, and at the table are people who are in, you know, kind relationships with the host and the hostess, the Posen family. But there is a certain austerity even here. It's something almost monastic even here. This is John Posen. What can we do? And I'm glad we have an architect like him. I mean, all this, of course, we are dealing with aristocrats. You know, they run the horses, and they even have a road which is, you know, very imperfect, so to speak. You will see in the last image is a road without asphalt and very rural. I keep saying Romania has a beautiful, beautiful rural, you know, environment. Still, unfortunately, many new buildings were erected here and there. You can become very saddened by what you see because it was the explosion of progress, and a lot of insensitive buildings were built, and they were built by architects most of the time, and in a very insensitive way. When what we look at here, and this is England, certainly not an uncivilized country, look at this, look at these buildings. This architect understood to be respectful towards all the buildings. He didn't build these buildings, they existed. He purchased them and then he modified certain things within. But the buildings, you see, he left unfinished walls, but these unfinished walls are very precious. And we have still some of these in Romania, but the obsession with the new and the obsession with progress and the obsession with asphalt and all these things affected our villages terribly. And we'll regret one day. You know, Prince Charles, you know, in his own attempt to escape civilization, tried to show that we could respect our villages, but we don't respect them. And it's very, very sad. If we could respect, if Romania would understand the value of its villages, not as they are now, but as the way that Lucian Blaga wrote about them, there is a great richness there which is vanishing now. And it's sad. And we'll realize our mistake, but it will be too late after we destroyed many good things and we build many horrible things. And look at this. This is where John Posen lives. Look at this. I think very few Romanians would accept to live in such a, would say, wait a minute, you know, this is, look, there is a ruin on the left. There is a ruin on the right. Look at that road. There is no asphalt. This is a desolate, terrible, terrible, terrible place. Here lives a very rich man, a very accomplished man, and a very sophisticated man, and a very sophisticated architect. Why he can and why we can't, let's talk about this. Because we still have such buildings in Romania, and we don't value them at all. I think we can learn something from John Pawson. Now, the Baron House, I only have two images, and I don't know, it was maybe my own self-destructiveness. I only chose to show two images, although I could have shown more, but I stopped with the image after this one. I would like to discuss actually one day maybe this building in comparison with Farnsworth building by Mies. They are very different, but in a way they have something similar. Look at this. This is perfect, no? I mean, it's almost alarmingly perfect. But look at this picture. This he didn't build for himself. And look at how the architect lives. Now, of course, the inside is a different story. But look at the outside. Isn't it interesting that the creator loves this and he builds this? Okay, this is the last picture on John Pawson. Let's wish him a happy birthday. And now we go to the extravagant Italian who will surprise you, I think, the way he surprised me. Okay, Carlo Mollino, 1905-1973. A very interesting man, and I wish I had more time to learn more about him. He intrigues me, to use a word that is kind of fashionable these days. This is the man, a dreamer who loved cars, extravagant cars, and loved women. After his death, it was discovered a huge archive of Polaroid pictures he took of beautiful women. Nobody knew of that collection until he died. He was also a professor at the Polytechnic in Turin. His father was an engineer, and I think he studied some engineering too. And he had that side in him, but also a very artistic side. A very interesting man, really. Now here he looks very intense, doesn't he? He almost looks, kind of Baudelarian. Carlo Mollino. And you see him here. He is I think, in his own plane, being the pilot of this plane. This man did many things, and not just in architecture and design, but also in his own life. Something usually the artists don't do, because the artist is kind of, an observer of life. But he also lived life. And this is rather unique. It seems for Carlo Mollino, both art and life were long. Ars longa, vita longa. As opposed to what the Latins said, ars longa, vita brevis. Now, for Carlo Mollino, life was also long, or was supposed to be long. Now, in one, right, he also wrote very knowledgeable and well-written theoretical works in a way. He had a reputation for loving to tell stories, to be like a storyteller. And in one writing that I began to read by him, there was this quotation from Voltaire, which I love: "The superfluous, a very necessary thing." My God, if our schools would only understand this, the value of what we call the superfluous, you know. And what do you do when you know, when the evaluation of your work is happening and you are asked to legitimize your project, to explain it, and you cannot say, well, I just felt like it, you know. I know it's superfluous, but I just felt like it. My heart was happy doing this nonsensical thing, dear professor. And the professor will say, please stop. You will receive a very bad grade anyway. You know, just stop this nonsense with the superfluous. But here we have Voltaire. Now, no one would contest that Voltaire had some intelligence in him, no? And some insight. Why would he say the superfluous is a very necessary thing? In essence, I think what Voltaire said is that you cannot work without play, that play is also important. And the play is superfluous, yes, capricious. In music, you know, there are pieces that are called caprice, you know, capriccio. You know, is what would life be without that side, you know? It would be a terrible thing. So I'm a great ardent supporter of superfluousness, you know. And that's why I invited the study of surrealism. You know, like, again, I come back to John Ruskin, who said clearly the most beautiful things in life are actually the most useless. And he gave us an example, the tale of the peacock and the lily. Why is it that we don't understand this? You know, we don't listen to Voltaire, we don't listen to John Ruskin. We only listen to Ernst Neufeld. You know, enough is enough. Let's create a revolution. Let's invite people to be superfluous. Just let's imagine we invite more than 10,000 architects in this country to indulge in superfluousness. Yes, I'm sure many bizarre things or even, you know, terrible so-called mistakes will come into being, but here and there might be some flowers, some jewels. Otherwise, we'll only have the predictable and tiring things. Anyway, this is what he wrote. Anyone who is not a beast and therefore has the awareness and dignity of a human being, the poorest human being who has never I don't know about that verb there, on his own individuality, in other words, who has never rejected his own individuality, will feel this need to be enchanted and to enchant, to express himself. Beautiful. What can I say? Beautiful, because he understood that in life we all want to be enchanted and to enchant. And life is beautiful if we have such occasions to be enchanted and to enchant. And then why are we making ourselves miserable by restricting ourselves to morosity, or I don't know how to call it, which rejects being enchanted and enchanting? That's why we need people like Claude, like Mollino, really, because it's really about the need for poetry, for beauty, even for foolishness. Yes, foolishness. Erasmus of Rotterdam, who was probably the greatest scholar of all times, he even wrote a book about the value of foolishness, you know, and the founder of Apple, the great, company that produces iPods, iPads, laptops, computers, and so on. Steve Jobs. If you want, if you really want to receive an encouragement to live and an encouragement to be creative, please open, you can find on YouTube the commencement speech by Steve Jobs. So on YouTube, he only once delivered such a speech, and he did it a short time after he was diagnosed with cancer. And it is a beautiful speech by this man who never studied more than 1 year in college. And here he was at Stanford University, you know, delivering a commencement speech. It was a great honor. Everybody there was much more educated formally than he was, but he was the one who was delivering the speech. And you know how he ends his speech? Well, not with his own words, but a quotation from what was called Whole Foods, Whole World. I forgot exactly how it was called. It was a catalog that was published around in the 60s, and the Whole Earth catalog, I think it was called the Whole Earth catalog, and it ended. Well, the catalog had these words on the back cover on its back cover. And Steve Jobs repeated these words, which relate to what our Italian architect says. He said, be hungry, be foolish. Be hungry and be foolish. What did he mean by be hungry? To have that hunger of knowledge, of that curiosity of a child, you know, who discovers life, discovers everything, to have that continuous hunger for something, you know, that thirst for living, for life, that joy in being alive. That's what he meant by be hungry and then be foolish. Be foolish. He was inviting everybody to be foolish. It would be beautiful if we would address the same thing to ourselves. Now, who is a fool? Is the one who is in love. Like Plato said, there are 4 kinds of madness: to be a poet, to be a prophet, to be in love, and to be clinically mad. But if you are in love, you certainly commit a lot of foolish things. You know, I mean, even Einstein talked about this in an amusing way. You know, he said that if you kiss a girl while you drive and you keep driving correctly, it means you don't give the necessary attention to the kissing. Yes, to be foolish means to be alive, to be childlike, to do, yes, crazy things, but this is what artists do, actually. They do crazy things, and we need them. Without them, life is a bore, let's confess. So this is exactly what, look at this. Voltaire said the same thing. The superfluous are very necessary things. To put it differently, to love or to be in love is a very necessary thing. Or to put it differently, to be creative is a very necessary thing. Anyway, moving forward. Again, this is what the Italian architect said. Everything is allowed as long as it stems from creative imagination. That is, and this is, I even double checked here, maybe the translation is not correct or not sufficiently correct. Decrepit beauty beyond any intellectualistic program. He said actually the same thing with different words, you know, that what is inscribed on the facade of the building in Vienna of the secessionists, that building built by Maria Olbrich, to every time it's art, and to art it's freedom. Well, this is what Mollino said too. Everything is allowed. In other words, freedom of expression is extremely important. That even he mentioned this earlier, that only a beast doesn't appreciate the need to express itself or himself or herself. A human being needs that freedom, and we have to fight for that freedom. And we have to fight for the diagonal that we saw earlier in the work of Rem Koolhaas and John Pawson. Uh, anyway, let's see what this man did. Let's see some sketches, some drawings. For a chair, he designed beautiful pieces of furniture. And we talked about diagonals. Well, here they are. Look at the legs of the chair. This is a stair. Can you believe it? I mean, look at the handrail. I mean, I see the steps, but look at the handrail. You know, it's crazy, and you know, also I think it's beautiful. But what else do we see here? We see that need for expression. What else do we see here? We see the advice of Steve Jobs. Be foolish. And Mollino was foolish, meaning he was creative. Another sketch by him. And then, oh, sorry, this is upside down. And strange that I noticed it when I placed it here, and I wanted to reject it, and it's still, it wasn't me who placed it here, really. It arrived here, I don't know why, because I remember when I decided not to display it in the PowerPoint, because it is upside down. But right now I mentioned foolishness now. So here we have, you know, a sign that foolishness was in the air, so to speak. Another building, I mean, a sketch for a building. He built a few buildings. Here, if you are so kind, please turn off the microphone. Or if you want to say something, please do so. Please turn off the microphone, please. So people talk on the phone. Sorry, I have to. I don't like to do this, but what can I do? I had to stop this because. Okay, we continue. I'm not even sure if the recording goes on. My relationship with technology is not always relaxed because of my vulnerabilities, not to call them infirmities. Okay, so we go forward with his drawings. That is, if I can. This is, you know, a side elevation of a table he designed. Some triangulations here for a house he built, actually, and another sketch for a building. This is furniture, and it's done very, very well. And even the drawing itself, the way it is presented, I think is nice. I don't know exactly what this is, but I found it, you know, under his name, so I placed it here. Another drawing, another sketch. Another sketch, but this one is more than a sketch. It's actually a rather rigorous drawing. This is a sketch for a side elevation for a seat that he designed, and the table that he designed, which is very, very nice. And you see there was a book published with this title, Carlo Mollino, Architect and Storyteller. And I was sent a few days ago, actually, or 1 or 2 weeks ago, a student sent me a link to Harvard University where someone very insistently and convincingly advocated the cause of writing in architecture. And he said that modernity kind of banished writing from architecture, but writing should come back to architecture. And I think is an interesting idea there. So to come across an architect who was also a storyteller is somehow in the direction of what that article tried to convey. Now this is, I'll just show chronologically some of his works. I found a website which showed some of his works in a chronological order, both built works and projects. So I'll read this. Carlo Mollino, together with this engineer, won the competition for the construction of the new offices of the Farmers Federation in Cuneo. The first building designed by Mollino is visibly influenced by the architecture of Erich Mendelssohn. And I did give a talk on Erich Mendelssohn, a very important German kind of expressionist architect, in whose studio Mollino had briefly worked 2 years earlier, but also combines elements of Italian second futurist architecture and of metaphysical art. I like to read this because it is my belief that metaphysics will save the physics in architecture. And I think to reflect on what metaphysics might mean in architecture is perhaps could be a fruitful activity. Now the building, seen from today, this was before the war. Maybe we don't find it so interesting. He was also very young. Now, from 1937, 1940, so just before the arrival of the great Second World War, I was sarcastic, of course. This is a building for the horse riding club, in charge of designing the seat of the horse riding club of Turin, with the support of this engineer. Carlo Mollino innovatively introduces elements borrowed from surrealism and metaphysical art in the horizon of the modern movement. He effectively merged functional architecture with expressive themes, designing his first masterpiece and an innovative design in the history of architecture. Now, I only have this image. It's a photograph. Maybe he did a photograph. You are not going to see often such images, the head of a horse and with some modernistic architecture behind. He was a very accomplished photographer as well. This man did many things. Casa in Collina, house on the hill in Turin, 1942. Giuseppe Pagano invited a group of Italian architects to design their own ideal house for the magazine Domus. Carlo Mollino designed a 7-story tower to be erected on the Turin hillside, containing only one room per floor in homage to the Feta di Polenta. I don't know what the Feta di Polenta is. The house built by Alessandro Antonelli in Turin. The project was published in the issue of February 1942. And this is the project. Can you imagine a hotel with only one room on each floor? Casa sull'Altura, house on the heights, southern Italy, 1943, 1944, so it was still war. Described by Carlo Mollino as a pavilion, a tent that Assyrian kings used to take with them on hunting sorties, the villa is perched on a hill in southern Italy, its structure inspired by the Roman domus, closed in around an internal courtyard. The project was not built, and Gio Ponti published it in Still, April 1944, together with an evocative letter from Mollino himself describing the genesis of the project. So another drawing. I look at these, are they birds? Or it reminds me very much of a drawing, a sketch by Brancusi. interesting how, you know, coincidences or synchronicities happen. Monumento ai caduti per la libertà, monument to the fallen Turin, 1945-1947. Carlo Mollino and the sculptor Umberto Mastroianni won the competition issued by the city of Turin for a monument to be erected in the town cemetery in memory of the partisans fallen during World War II. The two conceived a figurative monument accessible to the general public with a direct symbolism. An interesting, really, an interesting work. When you look at it, you know, it has an abstract, surrealist side, and then a very figurative one. I like it, you know. I mean, we have heroes, no? We call them heroes, but in essence, we are all extremely vulnerable. You know, some of us die, some of us, you know, endure more and die later. But all in all, there are heroic acts, you know, that are unobserved. And I think at all levels, life has moments of heroism, but in essence, we are all vulnerable. And somehow I see this empathy towards vulnerability in this modest monument that Mollino designed. Casa del Sole apartment building in Cervinia. The building was commissioned by engineer Dino Lora Totino, president of the Cervino Cableways Company, to implement the accommodation facilities of Cervinia. Carlo Mollino transforms the geometry of the facades of the traditional wooden Walser Alpine houses, of which he was a connoisseur because he loved to ski, into a reinforced concrete orthogonal modernist structure, unbalanced at the top by a small villa hovering like an eagle's nest. Now, reading these words, you might not quite get an idea of what might show up. You know, it's this thing here that, you know, is indeed looks a little bit precarious. In 1946-1947, Stazione Lago Nero, in this place, Carlo Mollino creates a sculptural building by intersecting a double pitched roof on the north side with a single pitched roof on the south side. On the structure composed of 5 reinforced concrete Virandil beams, he inserts on the upper floors an infill of logs. The building, commissioned by Piero Tuzio, owner of this car brand, he loved cars too, and he even designed an extravagant one, and you are going to see it, was the arrival point of a sled lift system. It contained a bar, restaurant, and served as a refuge. Here it is, and it's a good building by today's standards as well, and we are going to see it in detail a little further on. Casa Capriata. This was a project 1946-1954, and he built one based on the intuitions of this. This small weekend house for skiers was conceived by Carlo Mollino as a simple shape that could be prefabricated using minimal wooden elements. It was an insulated box to be mounted on any mountain terrain, suspended on different kinds of structures. So this is just a drawing, but you are going to see a building that he built later, very similar to this. With a hut, with a building actually almost floating, supported just at the bottom, as you can see. Certainly not growing from the earth, as Frank Lloyd Wright would have asked. Casa apartment building Sanremo, referencing Sant'Elia's architecture. The apartment block to be built on the Ligurian coast was unusually leaning back and made use of typical Carlo Mollino's geometrical lines and asymmetrical composition. For its interiors, Mollino conceived exquisite designs which he later used for other projects since the building was never built. The project was conducted in collaboration with the architect Mario Rogero. This is, I imagine, a recent rendering. It was not built. But you see futuristic elements here. They are quite explicit, and the reference to Santelia is a valid one. An auditorium, RIAI, radio something in Italian, is a famous, I know these three initials, but only the first one and the last one I know what. I don't know about the A. Anyway, Carlo Mollino redesigned only the interior of the concert hall inside the 19th century structure of the pre-existing Teatro Vittorio Emanuele. He elegantly transformed the rigid neoclassical structure into a fluent shell-shaped plan, updating the auditorium to modern technologies for TV and radio broadcastings. In 2005, the stage part and focal point of the auditorium has been completely erased. What can we say? This happens to buildings. Okay, moving forward. 1951, apartment building on Viale Maternita in Aosta. The Aosta Valley region commissioned Carlo Mollino as a social housing project. He played on pre-war schemes of Italian rationalism to design a horizontal volume highlighted by the use of many different and colorful materials and finishes reflecting Italian post-war cheerful spirit. Well, I don't know if the building is too cheerful, but let's hope with the materials that were mentioned that cheerfulness was achieved. Casa Cataneo in 1952-1953. The small villa for the Cataneo family sits like a resting animal, yet ready to jump on the hillside overlooking the Lake Maggiore. Carlo Mollino designed with great care all its details and conceived an unusual structure concealed in the roof to sustain the large span of its central part. Originally, the house was camouflaged using green and yellow enameled roof lines. And this himself there, but sorry, the picture doesn't have the right resolution. I think we are going to see more about this building later. Concorso per Palazzo del Lavoro, exhibition hall for Italia, 1961. This project ignited Mollino's interest in large concrete structures that marked the last part of his work. Carlo Mollino, with architect Carlo Bordonia and engineer Sergio Musmeci, took part to the competition issued by the city of Turin for an exhibition hall to be built in occasion of the celebrations for the unification of Italy. They presented 3 different technical options to cover the large span required. The project was assigned to Pierluigi Nervi, the great engineer, who placed several columns inside the building, not compelling with the free span required. This is just a sketch. The building was not built. And this is, I can't even read these words. Anyway, from 1963 to 1965, these people acquired the Rust card. I don't know what a Rust card is, with the intention to transform it into the Mountain Weekend House. The building was dismounted from its original location and brought in nearby this place where Carlo Mollino modified the building, turning a former storage into a home. Mollino did a rigorously philological work with the only addition of a modernist concrete. Philological, interesting. Why is that word there? Sometimes the translations from Italian are not so good. This is the building, but we are going to see it in more detail a little bit later on. Another work from 64-73, The block of the offices is suspended from the roof by means of, I'm a little bit tired of reading. He won the competition for the construction of the Chamber of Commerce together with his engineer and the architects Galardi and Graffi. And this is the building was built, but he has other interesting things and we are going to see them. Okay, so Teatro Reggio Opera House is considered a masterpiece from 65 to 73. We are going to see it in more detail. One of Carlo Mollino's masterpieces, the Teatro Reggio, is essentially composed of a foyer inspired by Piranesi's architectural visions of the Carceri, a fascinating open space in reinforced concrete, the auditorium, a large egg that envelops the audience and the stage in a completely curved space. The technical part of the stage, still one of the most modern and functional in Europe. Together with Mollino, the project was supervised by these engineers and the architect Carlo Graffi. And we are going to see more pictures of this work. And this is a website where you can read a lot about him. Is actually the whole of it is dedicated to him, carlomollino.org. What I just read was from the section architecture and some designs. And I think he had genius in design. I mean, look at this table, you know, the superfluousness of beauty and the beauty of superfluousness, because those legs were not supposed to be like this, right, from a rationalistic point of view. But no one can contest that this is a beautiful table. And it's beautiful exactly because it betrays expectations and because it has what might be called superfluity. So I think this table would have made Voltaire happy. And it makes me happy too. And I hope it makes you happy as well. Why? Because there is freedom, there is movement, there is lyricism, there is fluidity, and we need this. I think we need this. But he designed many, all kinds, you know, maybe not all as interesting as the table, but even here, do you see the power of the diagonal? Do you remember that column in the project by Rem Koolhaas and John Pawson in London? Well, it's not very different. Even here, there are interesting things, you know. He was an excellent designer. Now, of course, the one who is not adventurous would just place four vertical poles here in the corners of the table. But Mollino was not that kind of so-called creator. And look at these chairs. Interesting chairs, aren't they? Probably with three legs. I mean, surely with three legs. And I think they are very well designed. Here with a split back, you know, and this probably inspired a little bit Elizabeth Diller and Scofidio, or no, not them actually, although they played with the Rift too, but Tom Main has also a split chair, kind of like this, but here is just in the back. So Carlo Mollino, this is a book about his designs. Now look at this car. I'm not sure. Was it built? It looks like it is built because this was not modeled. The time when he designed it was not. It was not possible to model it like this. It was built, but I think it's beautiful. Indeed, why should the two eyes, of the car, be the same height? Or there is a slight asymmetry here, and it's whimsical. It's superfluous, yes, but I think it's nice. He loved cars, I understood. He loved everything that was beautiful. Carlo Mollino, the provocateur par excellence, is one title about him. Architecture and design between women, cars, sport, with a touch of genius. When the private life of a genius becomes his art. This was the sensationalist introduction to an article that I came across on the web. Another design by him. And I really think his designs were exquisite. I mean, even this, it has the straight part and it has the rebellious part, and they together collaborate and they create something that is both static and dynamic. Now, again, the rationalist and the timid would say, did he need to complicate himself here in this way? Yes, he did, okay? Because he wanted to express himself, okay? He didn't want to be a beast, okay? He wanted to be a human being with dignity and imagination. That's why, okay? And if you don't like it, don't buy it. Now I talk like a North American. They measure everything into selling and buying. We saw this one, but not from this angle. Great. It's great because it's free, it's lyrical, it's fluid, it's Art Nouveau, no, in a way, in many ways, not just in a way. Good work, Carlo, and happy birthday again to you. You see that chair, but this one has 4 legs and maybe not. Well, anyway, it's an interesting piece of furniture and crafted very well. Look at this here. What is going on? It's a certain complexity. We saw something similar. This one we didn't see, but we already recognize now. Now look at this. The delicious details here. Of course, the functionalist will say he doesn't need 2 little, places where it touches the floor. No, one is enough. No. They are both necessary. Okay. In as much as the tail of the peacock is necessary, okay? And if you have a complaint, please address it to the creator, okay? I mean, really, I look at this and I see genius here. It makes me smile. It makes me happy what I see here. It's very nice because it's whimsical. It's capricious. Now, to be honest, I'm not sure if this was done by him, but I found it under his name. But it's a little bit different, I think, a little heavier. His spirit was not as heavy, I think. But look at this. This is, I think, glorious. It's glorious in its shadow. It's glorious in the frontal view. And it's just nice, It's, what can I say? Welcome to creativity. And the capriciousness of creativity. Now we see 2 or 3 buildings by him, and with this we end our presentation on him. This is the Refugio Carlo Mollino. Look at this. We saw the sketch earlier, but now we see the building built. It's whimsical too. He elevated the house from the earth, but in a different way than Le Corbusier advised us to do with his pilotis. This is cultural, I don't know, it's a little bit more dramatic, and it's also a little bit more flamboyant. And what can you do? A different kind of man. But look at this triangle, sitting just almost on one leg here. I'm not happy with the resolution of these pictures. Here is a picture, but this seems to be a more recent picture. I don't know, maybe they are rebuilding, building another one. But the idea to place a building which in a certain way looks traditional because of the sloping roof on such a provocative leg is, it has to do with provocation. You see it here. I remember Wolfbrick saying that, you know, they tried hard to get rid of the third leg in architecture, of the fourth leg, and they arrived at three legs, and they were making efforts to eliminate the third leg. Well, this man already went further. You know, he longed for having buildings just on one leg. This is a strange picture of the man. This was a professor at the Polytechnic in Turin, and look at this. You know, I don't know who took the picture, but he's the man, and I don't know. I almost felt like saying something not quite academic, but an interesting man, and I mean, he's dressed like a geisha. I mean, anyway, let's move. A few works by him, architectural works. Teatro Reggio in Torino. We already saw one picture, but now you'll see more of this work. And it is praised for being very, very interesting inside, and it functions very well in terms of acoustics. I don't quite see the relationship with Piranesi's Carceri, but probably because I didn't study it carefully. I certainly do not see here Piranesi, but here, yes, maybe in a light way with those elements hanging from the ceiling. I don't know. It's a curved room, large room. There are no straight lines here, apparently, but there are some straight lines in the hallways. Anyway, it was refurbished recently, but it is interesting, even chromatically, white and black and red, white and red, and I have a certain sympathy for this too, because white symbolizes the queen and the moon and water, and red symbolizes the king, fire, and the sun in European alchemy. Now, redness is used often in theaters. You know, Jean Nouvel used it too in his opera building in Lyon, and others, of course, because is connected with theater, with the arts of the spectacle. But here there is an interesting the texture of the wall, the ornamentics of the wall. Look at this, and I had a more relevant picture, and I think I eliminated it because it was crushingly big. But now I regret. No, it's here. Look at this, you know, done with bricks. And again, who says that ornament is supposed to be banished from modern architecture? Well, again, we have a proof that it is not so. This is ornament, clearly. And ornament is related to this superfluousness that Voltaire invited us to not forget. In essence, it's a blank wall, besides the fact that it is curved. But because of this ornamentation, it becomes sensitive and is not disturbing. Quite the opposite. A good work, I think. And yes, the interior, the more I look at this room, the more I like it. It is somehow a little bit futuristic, so to speak. And I think color has to do something with it as well. Anyway, this this one we saw already. Okay, the next one, Casa K2. I have other pictures. He obviously liked to fly you know, and many architects love to fly, to defy gravity. And he didn't quite defy gravity, but the building does seem to does seem to want to take off. Also, interestingly, he left this part in this way, you know, unfinished, just like Posen. Yes, here is the architect. Elegant otherwise, in a suit. The building was still in the process of being constructed. He must have been happy, I think. And look at the inside, you know, the detail. We don't see too much here, but we have a feeling about. Look at that radiator painted in yellow. If indeed it was him who painted it so, and I don't know where this. I mean, it goes, you know, to the second floor or whatever. I don't know whether what this, because I don't have the plan of the house. An interesting building, you know, and it doesn't totally turn its back on what is called tradition, and we see this in the next works, Casa Garelli. This one we saw a picture of, and apparently it was made with materials obtained from a ruined building, and here we also see a base which is different from the rest of the building, just like in the previous building. But otherwise, we look at this building and it looks, you know, like a traditional building, a rustic building. But look at the handrail of this stair, which is, you know, modern. So he combines tradition with innovation. He's not afraid even to, you know, use kind of pastoral elements. You know, look at this and I think he loved tradition too. He was not one of those arrogant modern architects who turned their backs on everything that was old. No, here I see affection, yes, for the old. Now, I don't know if he was responsible even for these plates being placed there, but all in all, it's. I mean, also I don't know if he was the one who authored, you know, this. These accessories on the wall. But it's possible he would not have protested. I don't know. He was not a purist, you know, one of those, you know, stern priests of modernity who wouldn't accept even a different pair of slippers you know, used by the client. Capana Mollino, it's cabana, I guess, in Romanian. Here also he plays with this kind of legs. This building doesn't quite want to take off, but has parts which insinuate themselves in that direction somehow. It's a good building, I think. And here also we look at this wood, which is not afraid to get old. It's okay. It's clearly a modern building, but it's not an arrogant modernity, I think. He loves sports, and thus he built for sports, and sometimes he built for himself. So happy birthday to him as well. Happy birthday to John Pawson, and happy birthday to all of us. Thank you for participating.